One of the very best parts of my position at St. Paul's is working with the Emmaus ministry. As a spiritual center for downtown, St. Paul's has hosted the Emmaus ministry every Thursday for more than 40 years. Each week, an average of 130 of our downtown neighbors gather together with a team of 15 to 18 volunteers in Scott Hall. We extend a warm welcome to our guests and serve a hot lunch made by Uli. In addition, we offer our guests new socks, underwear, and toiletries, as well as donated clothes and shoes, and even luggage. We're doing a luggage drive right now. We provide direct financial assistance by paying modest bills like utilities and mobile phones, and making referrals for rental assistance. Social service caseworkers and Medicaid crisis organizations are present most Thursdays to assist guests in accessing resources. And on occasion, VCU medical students conduct free health screenings. We even have periodic voter registration tables. And one of our guests frequently puts on a juggling show for us. The majority of our guests at Emmaus are people of color. Some suffer from severe mental or physical illness, chronic addiction, and substance abuse. Others are trying to get on their feet after being released from prison. Some are immigrants, victims of domestic violence and trafficking, veterans with PTSD, senior citizens, and single moms with children. While a portion of our guests are truly homeless, the majority live on fixed incomes or work low-wage jobs, one check away from being destitute. So you may wonder why this ministry is named after Emmaus. On Easter evening, it is in the town of Emmaus, according to Luke's gospel that we read today, that the disciples recognize the risen Jesus in the stranger whom they adopt along the road and invite to supper. When they first encounter him, they do not recognize their teacher. So preoccupied are they by their own despair and grief. Having witnessed Jesus' gruesome and humiliating public crucifixion, they are convinced that Jesus is dead and gone. They cannot fathom that God's promised Messiah, the one to redeem Israel, could be executed like a common criminal. Jesus was not who he said he was. Their hopes are dashed, and they feel betrayed and abandoned. And while they gloomily recount their tale of woe to the stranger, he interrupts them. "Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart." He goes on to interpret recent events through the narratives of the prophets and the scriptures to show that, of course, the Messiah must suffer and be killed in order to rise again and redeem the world. Moved by his words, they invite the stranger to stay for supper. It is around the table when he takes, blesses, breaks, and gives them bread, that their eyes are fully open, and they at last recognize Jesus, their true Messiah, crucified yet risen from the dead. And even though Jesus vanishes upon their recognition of him, the disciples know down in their bones they have encountered the reality of Jesus' resurrected presence in their midst. Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road and while he was opening the scriptures to us? What is most significant, though, is what they do next. Having seen the risen Jesus, that very same hour, they rush back to Jerusalem, to interrupt the mourning of their fellow companions, the 11 disciples, and they regather in community to bear witness to the good news of Easter. Christ is risen. The Lord has risen indeed. Alleluia, alleluia. Jesus makes his living presence known around the table in communion with his disciples so that they, in response, create a new community that makes Jesus known to the world. This is the task of Easter. Emmaus is aptly named because we most profoundly encounter the real living presence of the crucified and risen Christ in those living on the margins of society, those who are invisible to most of us as we walk along the roads of our lives, absorbed by our own narrative. When we see and recognize the face of Christ in the stranger, the one who is hungry, thirsty, naked, in prison, or sick, we cannot help but be drawn into God's project of redemption. We are then compelled to create relationships and communities that seek and serve Christ in all persons in order to make God's kingdom known. As you did to the least of these, you did to me, says Jesus. And yet, Emmaus is not a ministry of mere charity. If that is all it is, then it is we who are foolish and slow of heart. We are not called to be white saviors who rescue the less fortunate and fetishize their suffering. We must constantly guard against perpetuating entrenched social inequities by fostering false dependency that makes us feel virtuous while robbing the dignity from those we profess to serve. Pastor Robert Lumpton, author of Toxic Charity, warns us that such paternalism, for which the church has been notorious, including this church, is the kindest way to destroy people. Our Emmaus ministry only makes Christ known when we recognize, regardless of whether we are serving or being served, that we all of us are in desperate need of Easter, where we experience Christ's risen presence in and through the care and support of community. The late and blessed Pope Francis prophetically said, "You who live by always giving and think that you need nothing, do you realize that you are poor yourself? Do you realize that you are very poor and you need what the poor can give you? Do you let yourself be evangelized by the poor, by the sick, by those you serve?" Emmaus guest evangelized me, proclaiming the good news of Easter every single Thursday. One of my favorite stories is that when we were still serving lunch outside because of COVID, and I had just recovered from my first ankle break, I was scurrying around, as I am wont to do, to get lunch started, and I tripped on the breezeway steps, falling face first on the brick patio. My knees and palms had barely made contact with the ground when I was swiftly lifted back up to standing by two of our Emmaus guests, one on my right, one on my left, who held on to me and asked me over and over again, "Pastor, are you okay? Are you okay? You need to slow down. You can't break another ankle." The psalmist's words were ringing in my ears, he shall give his angels charge over you. They shall bear you in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. My heart was burning within me. Who was pastoring whom? I have seen so much Jesus in these people, both in their journeys of terrible suffering and deprivation, and in their amazing stories of resilience and redemption against all odds. I am so touched and moved and changed every time a guest comes back to share with me, I got the job. I found a place to live. I got my rent paid for. I have been sober for 60 days. My prayers have been answered. Oh, and their faith. While many of these people are so poor, they are so rich in faith, in the conviction of God's blessings and goodness at work in their lives all the time. And it makes me look in the mirror. Am I so willing to completely trust in God and see God's mighty hand at work to save me on a daily basis? Emmaus is named for the story in Luke's gospel because it is an Easter ministry. A ministry of relationships, of companionship and community that makes known Jesus' presence within and among us. This is the place. This is the place of ongoing resurrection. We experience this divine presence not because we're handing out free lunches to the hungry, but because we, volunteers and guests alike, come together. We show up. We are present with each other. Giving out socks and underwear is incidental to learning people's names, looking one another in the eye, hearing people's stories, bearing one another's burdens, and sometimes, yes, sometimes, having to hear and speak hard truths in love, and even being evangelized by those who are the most vulnerable in our society. It's not perfect. Does it get messy? Is there drama? Do we screw up? Is it church? Yes, of course, all the time. But Jesus always shows up. Jesus always shows up when we are willing to enter into life-giving relationships and create community, not based on pity and power, but on mutual care, shared humanity, and real presence. This is how the reign of God is made known, as it was on that Easter evening around the table when the disciples recognized Jesus in the breaking of the bread. Many of us may feel, as the disciples did that first evening of Easter, like the world that we have known has come to an end, and we are forsaken. But the road to Emmaus is not a dead end. Rather, it is the beginning of our Easter journey of new life and hope through shared community in solidarity with those who suffer. Jesus makes his dying and rising presence known around the table in communion with us every Sunday, so that we might leave this place to nurture and create communities like Emmaus, making this divine presence known amidst so much injustice, terror, and hurt. For where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them, Jesus promises. Come, Let us gather, companions on the way, in communion, to proclaim Christ is risen, the Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia, alleluia. No less than the redemption of the world depends on this good news of Easter.